First contact fumbles. Ambassador Zorn of the Galactic Confederation stood before the ornate mirror in his quarters aboard the diplomatic vessel Starlight Envoy, adjusting the shimmering robe that draped over his iridescent exoskeleton. His antennae twitched nervously as he rehearsed his opening speech for humanity's official welcome into the galactic community. "Greetings, noble Earthlings," he chittered softly to his reflection. "On behalf of the 100,000 sentient species of the Galactic Confederation, I extend our warmest." A sharp knock at the door interrupted his practice. "Enter," Zorn called out, his mandibles clicking in mild irritation. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing Security Chief Vixna, a towering arachnoid whose 8 eyes blinked in rapid succession, a sure sign of agitation. "Ambassador," she said, her voice a low rumble, "we have a situation." Zorn's antennae drooped. "What now, Vixna?" "Please tell me Lieutenant Kazed hasn't attempted to improve the ship's translation matrix again. I'm still recovering from last week's diplomatic incident with the Fromulan delegation." Vixna's mandibles twitched in what passed for a grimace among her species. "If only it were that simple, sir. It seems our advance team has, well, there's no easy way to say this. They've crash-landed on Earth." For a moment, Zorn stood perfectly still, his compound eyes fixed on Vixna, as if waiting for the punchline of a particularly unfunny joke. When none came, he slumped onto his hovering rest pod, his exoskeleton creaking in distress. "Crash-landed," he repeated flatly. "Our advance team, composed of our finest diplomats and cultural experts, tasked with making first contact and paving the way for this historic meeting, has crash-landed on the planet we're meant to welcome into the galactic community." Vixna nodded, her chelicera clacking nervously. "I'm afraid so, sir. The good news is that they're all alive and relatively unharmed. The bad news is, well, perhaps it's best if I show you." She produced a holographic projector from one of her many utility pouches and activated it. A shimmering image sprang to life between them, showing a chaotic scene that made Zorn's antennae curl in horror. The advance team's sleek shuttlecraft was half buried in what appeared to be a large, colorful structure made of flimsy materials. Crowds of humans, far more than should have been present for a carefully orchestrated first contact, swarmed around the crash site. Many were pointing small devices at the scene, likely primitive recording technology. But what truly caught Zorn's attention was the behavior of his team. Dr. Xil, the renowned xenobiologist, was attempting to communicate with a group of small humans by performing an interpretive dance that looked suspiciously like the mating ritual of the Betelgeusian swamp slugs. Meanwhile, Cultural Laze and Fist was sampling various brightly colored substances from a nearby stand, his face tentacles changing colors rapidly in what Zorn recognized as signs of extreme gastronomic distress. "Where exactly did they land?" Zorn asked, dreading the answer. Vixna's reply was barely audible. "According to our scans, a human entertainment complex called Disneyland." Zorn buried his face in his upper appendages, wondering if it was too late to request a transfer to the Outer Rim diplomatic course. Surely negotiating truces between warring gas cloud entities couldn't be more challenging than this. "Right," he said finally, straightening up and smoothing his robe. "We need to contain this situation immediately. Prepare my personal shuttle. We're going down there." Vixna's exoskeleton rattled in surprise. "But sir, the official welcoming ceremony." "We'll have to wait," Zorn interrupted. "Right now, our priority is damage control. Besides," he added with a resigned click of his mandibles, "I suspect the humans have already been thoroughly welcomed by our wayward advance team." As they hurried through the corridors of the Starlight Envoy, Zorn's mind raced. His centuries of diplomatic training hadn't prepared him for anything like this. First contacts were supposed to be meticulously planned affairs, not impromptu crash landings in amusement parks. They reached the shuttle bay, where a sleek craft awaited them. As Zorn settled into his seat, he turned to Vixna. "What do we know about this Disneyland?" he asked. Vixna's eyes flickered as she accessed the ship's database. It appears to be a place of great cultural significance to humans, she reported. A site of pilgrimage where they partake in various rituals involving costumed beings, simulated adventures, and the consumption of sugar-laden substances. Zorn's antennae twitched thoughtfully. Fascinating. Perhaps we can use this to our advantage. If we frame our arrival as part of their entertainment, we might be able to mitigate the damage. As their shuttle broke through Earth's atmosphere, Zorn peered out at the blue and green planet below. It was beautiful, he had to admit, though the readings on the environmental sensors made him grateful for the shuttle's life support systems. How did humans survive in such a corrosive atmosphere? They approached the crash site, the garish colors of Disneyland growing ever more vivid. Zorn could see the crowd had grown even larger, with uniformed humans attempting to establish a perimeter around the downed shuttlecraft. "Bring us in gently," Zorn instructed the pilot. "Let's not add to the chaos." As they touched down in a cleared area near the crash, Zorn took a deep breath, filling his spiracles with purified air. "Remember," he said to Vixna and the small security team accompanying them, "we are diplomats first. No matter what happens, we must maintain our composure and show these humans the best of galactic civilization." The shuttle's door opened with a dramatic hiss, and Zorn stepped out into the dazzling California sunlight. The crowd fell silent, thousands of eyes fixed on him. He raised all four of his arms in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "Greetings, noble Earthlings," he began, his translator converting his clicks and chirps into English. "I am Ambassador Zorn of the Galactic Confederation. We come in peace and with sincere apologies for dropping in so unexpectedly." For a moment, there was complete silence. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, a child's voice piped up, "Mommy, is this a new ride?" Before Zorn could respond, the crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Confused but relieved, he turned to Vixna. "It seems they believe this is part of their entertainment," he whispered. "Let's use that to our advantage while we retrieve our team." They made their way through the crowd, which parted easily before them, many humans stopping to take selfies with the bewildered aliens. Zorn tried to maintain a dignified demeanor, but he couldn't help feeling like some sort of exotic exhibit. They finally reached the crash site, where they found Dr. Xill attempting to extract himself from a tangled mass of what appeared to be synthetic spider silk. "Ambassador," he cried upon seeing Zorn, "thank the cosmic harmonies you're here. I was merely attempting to demonstrate our phylogenetic diversity to these small humans, and they insisted I try something called a Spider-Man meet and greet." Zorn helped untangle the flustered xenobiologist. "Where are the others?" he asked urgently. "Fest is over by that colorful dispensary," Xill replied, pointing with one of his less tangled limbs. "I believe he's discovered something called a sugar rush. And Jorpa, well," he trailed off, mandibles clicking in embarrassment. Zorn followed Xill's gaze to a nearby artificial lagoon, where he spotted the unmistakable bioluminescent glow of Jorpa, the team's anthropologist. She appeared to be engaged in some sort of aquatic performance with a group of humans in matching attire. "She's joined something called the Little Mermaid caste," Xill explained. "Apparently, she bears a striking resemblance to an undersea deity in human mythology." Zorn felt a headache building in his central ganglion. "Vixna," he said wearily, "please retrieve Jorpa. I'll deal with Fist." As they split up to collect their errant team members, Zorn couldn't help but marvel at the humans' reaction to their presence. Instead of panic or hostility, they were met with enthusiasm and curiosity. Perhaps, he thought, this unplanned first contact wasn't a complete disaster after all. He found Fist surrounded by a group of fascinated humans, his face tentacles cycling through a rainbow of colors as he sampled various confections. "Ambassador," Fest exclaimed upon seeing Zorn, his speech slightly slurred. "You must try this cotton candy. It's like eating a neutron star, but sweeter." Zorn gently but firmly steered Fest away from the snack stand. "I'm sure it's delightful," he said, "but we need to regroup and assess the situation." As they made their way back to the crash site, Zorn was stopped by a human in an ornate uniform adorned with numerous badges. The human's face wore an expression that Zorn's cultural training suggested was a mixture of confusion, excitement, and mild panic. "Excuse me," the human said. "I'm the park manager. Is this part of the new Star Wars Galaxy's Edge expansion?" Zorn's translator took a moment to process the question, but he recognized an opportunity when he saw one. "Yes," he said smoothly. "You could say we're from a galaxy far, far away. We apologize for the unscheduled arrival. There was a slight malfunction in our hyperdrive." The manager's face lit up. "Wow, the realism is incredible. The Imagineers have really outdone themselves this time. Listen, would you mind if we incorporated your ship into the attraction? It would be a great photo opportunity." Zorn glanced at the half-buried shuttlecraft, then back at the eager manager. "We would be honored," he said, his diplomat's mind already spinning this debacle into a potential cultural exchange opportunity. "Perhaps we could discuss a more formal arrangement for future visits." As they shook hands, Zorn had practiced this human custom extensively. He caught sight of Vixnar, returning with a damp and slightly iridescent Jorpa in tow. The security chief's expression suggested that extracting their anthropologist from her new undersea role had been no easy task. With his team finally reassembled, Zorn addressed the crowd once more. "Noble Earthlings," he began, his translator working overtime to convey the right tone of friendly authority. "We thank you for your warm welcome and your embrace of our impromptu performance. We must take our leave now, but rest assured, the Galactic Confederation looks forward to many more interactions with your fascinating species." As they boarded their shuttle amid cheers and waves from the crowd, Zorn allowed himself a moment of relief. Against all odds, they had managed to turn a potential diplomatic nightmare into what might be the beginning of a unique and positive relationship with humanity. Once they were airborne, heading back to the Starlight Envoy, Zorn turned to his chastened advance team. "Well," he said, his antennae twitching with a mixture of amusement and exasperation, "I believe we've all learned some valuable lessons about human culture today. Now, who would like to help me rewrite my welcoming speech? I have a feeling our original approach might need some adjusting." As the shuttle ascended through the atmosphere, Zorn gazed down at the receding landscape of Earth. Despite the day's chaos, he felt a growing optimism about humanity's place in the galactic community. They were unpredictable, yes, but also adaptable, curious, and remarkably open-minded. The official first contact might not have gone according to plan, but perhaps, Zorn mused, that was fitting for a species that seemed to thrive on the unexpected. As they docked with the Starlight Envoy, he began to compose a new opening line in his mind. "Greetings, Earthlings. Welcome to the greatest show in the galaxy." Cultural clashes and comedic calamities. Ambassador Zorn stood before the United Nations General Assembly, his iridescent exoskeleton gleaming under the bright lights. The chamber was packed, with representatives from every nation on Earth eagerly awaiting his address. In the week since the Disneyland incident, as it had come to be known, the world had been abuzz with excitement and speculation about their new galactic neighbors. Zorn's antennae twitched nervously as he began his speech. "Distinguished representatives of Earth," he said, his translator converting his clicks and chirps into a mellifluous baritone. "On behalf of the Galactic Confederation, I thank you for this warm welcome. We look forward to a future of mutual understanding, cultural exchange, and peaceful coexistence." As he continued his carefully prepared remarks, Zorn couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Despite the initial hiccup, things were going smoothly. The humans seemed genuinely eager to join the galactic community, and initial talks had been promising. Little did he know that across the city, his advance team was about to unleash a new wave of chaos. Dr. Xil, the xenobiologist, stared in fascination at the small, fur-covered creature before him. Remarkable, he muttered, his compound eyes taking in every detail. And you say this is a common Earth companion species? The hot dog vendor, who had been watching the alien's intense scrutiny of his chihuahua with a mixture of amusement and concern, nodded. Yeah. It's just a dog, man. You want a hot dog or what? Sill's antennae perked up. Hot dog? Is this some sort of prepared canine dish? How intriguing. Yes, I would very much like to sample this hot dog. The vendor, deciding that this was above his pay grade, simply shrugged and prepared the hot dog. As he handed it over, he couldn't help but ask, "So, you guys really don't have dogs where you come from?" Sill, already examining the hot dog with his various sensory appendages, shook his head. "Nothing quite like this. Our companion species tend to be more gelatinous." He took a bite, and his eyes widened in surprise. "Great galaxies. This is delicious. What variety of canine is this made from?" The vendor's jaw dropped. "What? No, man, it's not made from actual dogs. It's just called that. It's made from..." He paused, realizing he wasn't entirely sure himself. "You know what? Never mind. Enjoy your hot dog, buddy." As Sill continued to enjoy his newfound delicacy, he failed to notice the small crowd that had gathered, many surreptitiously recording the encounter on their phones. By evening, #AlienEachHotDog would be trending worldwide, accompanied by much speculation about the Galactic Confederation's culinary practices. Meanwhile, in Central Park, Cultural Lays and Fist was attempting to engage in what he believed to be a common Earth recreational activity. He had spent hours studying human behavior and had concluded that an essential part of their culture involved throwing flat, circular objects at each other in open spaces. "Greetings, fellow Earth dwellers," he called out cheerfully to a group of startled picnickers. "I wish to partake in your traditional disc-throwing ritual. Shall we engage in this bonding exercise?" Before anyone could respond, Fist produced a stack of fine china plates from his utility belt and began flinging them with great enthusiasm. The plates sailed through the air, shattering against trees and scattering fragments across the grass. "Am I doing it correctly?" Fest asked, his face tentacles wiggling with excitement. "I find this practice most invigorating, though perhaps a bit wasteful. Do you not have reusable discs?" One brave soul in the group finally found his voice. I think you mean frisbees, dude. Those were plates." Fest's tentacles drooped in embarrassment. "Oh dear, it seems I have misinterpreted your customs. My deepest apologies." He looked forlornly at the shattered china strewn about. "Perhaps we could engage in another Earth pastime. I have also studied the art of food fighting. I believe I have some suitable ammunition in my nutrient pack." The picnickers hastily declined and began packing up their belongings, leaving Fest alone and confused. He made a mental note to update the Galactic Confederation's database on human recreational activities. Across town, anthropologist Jorpa had taken it upon herself to study human mating rituals. Her research had led her to a bustling nightclub, where she now stood in the middle of the dance floor, her bioluminescent skin pulsing in rhythm with the pounding music. "Fascinating," she murmured, observing the writhing mass of humanity around her. "It appears that erratic movement and close physical proximity are key components of human courtship." Deciding to immerse herself fully in the experience, Jorpa began to undulate her gelatinous form in what she hoped was an appealing manner. Her natural bioluminescence, combined with the club's strobe lights, created a dazzling display that soon caught the attention of the other clubgoers. A young man, emboldened by a few drinks, approached her. "Hey there, gorgeous," he shouted over the music. "You've got some crazy awesome moves. Wanna dance?" Jorpa's translator struggled with the slang, but she understood the general intent. "Certainly," she replied enthusiastically. "I would be delighted to engage in this courtship ritual with you. Shall we proceed to the nest-building phase, or is that premature?" The man blinked in confusion. Nest-building. I was just asking for a dance, but you know what? Sure, let's nest build. Whatever that means. As Jorpa began to secrete a viscous, web-like substance from her pores, the first step in her species' nest-building process, screams of surprise and disgust erupted around them. The dance floor quickly cleared, leaving Jorpa alone in a slowly expanding puddle of alien biomatter. Have I committed a faux pas? She wondered aloud, her antennae drooping in confusion. Back at the United Nations, Ambassador Zorn was just wrapping up his speech when an aide rushed in, whispering urgently to one of the human diplomats. Zorn's sensitive antennae picked up snippets of the conversation. Central Park, shattered plates, nightclub evacuation. With a sinking feeling in his thorax, Zorn realized that his advance team had struck again. He quickly concluded his remarks and excused himself, rushing out of the chamber with as much dignity as he could muster. In the hallway, he was met by a frantic Vixna. "Sir," she said, her exoskeleton rattling with stress, "we have multiple situations developing across the city. Dr. Xill is giving an impromptu lecture on alien cuisine in Times Square. Fest has started a city-wide scavenger hunt for the perfect throwing disc. And Jorpa, well, the human authorities are trying to figure out how to remove her biomatter from the nightclub without damaging the floor." Zorn's antennae curled in dismay. "By the cosmic harmonies," he muttered. "I thought we had made it clear they were to remain in their quarters unless accompanied by a senior diplomatic staff member." Vixna's mandibles clicked in embarrassment. "We did, sir, but it seems they took your speech about cultural exchange quite literally. They believed they were fulfilling their duty by immersing themselves in human culture." Zorn sighed, a sound like rustling leaves. "Very well. We need to contain this quickly. Contact the human authorities and assure them that we will cover any damages. Then, gather a team and let's go collect our wayward scientists before they cause an interstellar incident." As they hurried out of the building, Zorn couldn't help but reflect on the irony of the situation. He had spent decades studying human culture, preparing for every possible scenario in their first official contact. Yet somehow, he had failed to anticipate the chaos that could be caused by well-meaning but woefully misguided alien scientists let loose in New York City. Their first stop was Times Square, where they found Dr. Xill standing atop a hot dog cart, regaling a large crowd with tales of alien cuisine. And on the gas giant Klorblax, he was saying, his voice amplified by an improvised megaphone made from a traffic cone, "The inhabitants consume sentient clouds of ionized particles." Can you imagine? It's like eating a thunderstorm. The crowd was a mix of fascinated tourists, bewildered locals, and a growing number of news crews. Zorn quickly made his way through the throng, Vixna close behind. "Dr. Xill," Zorn called out, trying to keep the exasperation from his voice, "I believe it's time to conclude your lecture." Xill's compound eyes swiveled to focus on Zorn. "Ah, Ambassador, excellent timing. I was just about to demonstrate the proper technique for consuming a Regulan slime beetle. Would you care to assist?" Before Zorn could respond, Vixna had already scaled the hot dog cart and was gently but firmly guiding Xill down. "Perhaps another time, Doctor," she said smoothly. "The ambassador has an important cultural exchange activity planned for you back at the embassy." As they led Xill away, Zorn turned to address the crowd. "Thank you all for your interest in galactic cuisine," he said, his translator working overtime to convey a tone of polite authority. "We look forward to many more culinary exchanges in the future, perhaps under slightly more formal circumstances." Their next stop was Central Park, where they found Fest in the middle of what appeared to be an impromptu festival. Hundreds of people had gathered, many carrying an assortment of disc-shaped objects. Frisbees, yes, but also vinyl records, hubcaps, and what looked suspiciously like a manhole cover. Fist was in his element, his face tentacles writhing with excitement as he examined each offering. "Marvelous," he exclaimed, hefting a hubcap. "The diversity of your throwing discs is truly remarkable. Tell me, is this ceremonial or purely recreational? Zorn pushed through the crowd, already composing a mental draft of the apology he would need to issue to the city's parks department. Fist, he said, trying to keep his mandibles from clicking in frustration. I believe you've had quite enough cultural exchange for one day. Fist's tentacles drooped slightly at the sight of the ambassador. But sir, he protested, I've only just begun to understand the intricacies of this fascinating human pastime. Did you know they have professional leagues dedicated to disc throwing? Truly, the ingenuity of these humans knows no bounds. With a patience born of years of diplomatic service, Zorn gently pried the hubcap from Fist's appendages. Yes, it's all very fascinating, he agreed, steering the enthusiastic cultural liaison away from the crowd. And I'm sure you'll have many more opportunities to study human recreation, perhaps after a thorough review of proper research protocols. As they made their way out of the park, Vixna coordinated with the local authorities to ensure that all the donated discs were returned to their rightful owners. Zorn made a mental note to requisition a few regulation frisbees for the embassy. It seemed the safest way to indulge Fist's newfound passion without risking further property damage. Their final stop was the nightclub where Jorpa had attempted to engage in human courtship rituals. As they approached, they could see a cordon of police officers and what appeared to be hazmat teams surrounding the building. Zorn's antennae drooped at the sight. Oh, Jorpa, he muttered, what have you done now? They found the anthropologist sitting dejectedly on the curb, her bioluminescent skin cycling through muted shades of blue and green, colors that Zorn recognized as indicating embarrassment and confusion in her species. Ambassador, she said as they approached, her voice tinged with genuine distress, I fear I may have misinterpreted some key aspects of human mating behavior. It seems that the secretion of nesting fluids is not, in fact, a standard part of their courtship process. Zorn patted her gently on what passed for a shoulder. An understandable mistake, he said, his tone gentle but firm. Perhaps in the future, we should arrange for more structured cultural exchanges, ones that don't involve the evacuation of public venues. As they made their way back to the embassy, Zorn's communicator buzzed with an incoming message from the Galactic Confederation's High Council. He braced himself for a stern reprimand, but to his surprise, the message was one of cautious optimism. Ambassador Zorn, the message read, Initial reports from Earth are most intriguing. The humans seem to possess a remarkable capacity for adaptation and a surprising enthusiasm for alien contact. While we advise more careful management of your advanced team, we encourage you to continue fostering this spirit of open cultural exchange. The Galactic Confederation eagerly awaits further updates on this most unusual species. Zorn's antennae twitched in a mixture of relief and bemusement. It seemed that even their missteps were being viewed as valuable data by the High Council. As they reached the embassy, he turned to his chastened team. Well, he said, his mandibles clicking in what his species considered a wry smile, it appears our mission continues. But perhaps tomorrow we could focus on some slightly less hands-on cultural studies. I believe the humans have these wonderful institutions called libraries. I'm told they're quite informative and blessedly free of biomatter secretions. As the team filed into the embassy, already chattering excitedly about their next foray into human culture, Zorn allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. The road to galactic fellowship was proving to be far more unpredictable than he had ever imagined. But as he watched his team's enthusiasm, despite their mishaps, he couldn't help but feel a growing optimism. Perhaps, he mused, it was precisely this chaos, this wonderful unpredictability, that made humanity such a potentially valuable addition to the galactic community. After all, in a universe of infinite diversity, adaptability was perhaps the most valuable trait of all. With a soft chirp of amusement, Zorn headed inside to begin drafting his report to the High Council. He had a feeling that Earth's integration into the Galactic Confederation was going to be anything but boring. The looming threat, as the Earth's sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the New York City skyline. Ambassador Zorn stood at the window of his office in the hastily established Galactic Confederation Embassy. His compound eyes reflected the twinkling lights of the city, a sight that still filled him with wonder despite the chaos of the past few weeks. A gentle chime from his communication device drew his attention away from the view. "Yes," he answered, his antennae twitching in anticipation. The voice of his assistant, a young Arcturian named Slob, crackled through the speaker. "Ambassador, we've just received an urgent transmission from the High Council. They're requesting an immediate conference." Zorn's exoskeleton tensed. Urgent messages from the High Council were rarely good news. "Very well," he replied, trying to keep the apprehension out of his voice. "Patch them through to my private chamber." As he made his way to the secure communication room, Zorn's mind raced through possible scenarios. Had news of their mishaps reached the Council? Were they being recalled? Or was it something else entirely? The holographic projector hummed to life as he entered the room, and the imposing figure of High Counselor Sarah materialized before him. The counselor's crystalline form shimmered with an internal light, their faceted eyes fixed on Zorn with an intensity that made his antennae quiver. "Ambassador Zorn." Sarah's voice resonated, a sound like chiming crystals. "We have grave news. Our long-range sensors have detected a Zrakam battle fleet on a direct course for Earth." Zorn's mandibles clicked in shock. The Zrakon, a warlike species known for their brutal efficiency and disdain for lesser races, they had been a thorn in the side of the Galactic Confederation for millennia, but an outright attack on a newly discovered species. This was unprecedented. But why? Zorn managed to ask, his translator struggling to convey the mix of confusion and alarm in his voice. "Earth has only just made first contact. They pose no threat to the Zrakon." Zira's crystalline form pulsed with what might have been a sigh. "It seems our efforts to keep Earth's location secret have failed. We believe the Zrakon intercepted some of our transmissions. They see humanity's potential admission to the Confederation as a threat to their dominance in this sector." Zorn's mind reeled with the implications. Earth, with its relatively primitive technology, would stand no chance against a Zrakon invasion force. The fledgling relationship between humanity and the Galactic Confederation, so full of promise despite its rocky start, could be snuffed out before it truly began. "What are your orders, Counselor?" Zorn asked, straightening his posture and trying to project a confidence he didn't quite feel. Zira's faceted eyes seemed to bore into him. "The Council is divided on how to proceed. Some argue for immediate evacuation of our diplomatic corps, to avoid being drawn into a conflict. Others suggest we provide Earth with advanced defensive technology, despite the risks of accelerating their technological development." The counselor paused, their crystalline form shimmering with internal debate. "However, given your unique experiences with the humans, we are entrusting this decision to you, Ambassador. You have one Earth week to assess the situation and recommend a course of action. Choose wisely, Zorn. The fate of an entire species may rest on your decision." With that ominous pronouncement, Cyrus' hologram flickered and vanished, leaving Zorn alone in the suddenly too quiet room. For a long moment, Zorn stood motionless, his mind racing. Then, with a decisive click of his mandibles, he activated the embassy's internal communication system. "Assemble the team," he ordered. "We have a crisis to address." An hour later, Zorn surveyed the assembled group in the embassy's conference room. Dr. Xil, cultural liaison Fist, and anthropologist Jorpa sat around the table, their expressions, insofar as their alien physiologies allowed for expression, a mix of curiosity and concern. Security Chief Vixna stood at attention near the door, her multiple eyes constantly scanning for potential threats. "My friends," Zorn began, his voice grave, "we face a challenge unlike any we have encountered before. The Zrakon are coming, and Earth lies defenseless in their path." A ripple of alarm passed through the room. Fest's face tentacles writhed in distress, while Sill's compound eyes seemed to grow even larger with shock. But surely the Confederation will intervene. Jorpa asked, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with agitation. We can't simply abandon the humans to such a fate. Zorn's antennae drooped slightly. The situation is complicated. The Council is divided on how to proceed. They have tasked us with assessing the situation and recommending a course of action. Well, that's simple enough. Dr. Xill chittered excitedly. We provide the humans with our most advanced defensive technology. Their innovative nature combined with our scientific knowledge could create a formidable defense. Vixna's mandibles clicked in disagreement and risk accelerating their technological development beyond their cultural maturity. We've all seen how they struggle with their current level of technology. Giving them access to galactic-level weaponry could be disastrous. Not to mention, Fest interjected, his tentacles waving thoughtfully. Such an action could be seen as a direct provocation by this Raycon. It might escalate the conflict beyond this single planet. Zorn nodded, acknowledging each point. These are all valid concerns, but we must also consider the ethical implications of leaving a sentient species defenseless against annihilation. The room fell silent as the weight of the situation settled upon them. It was Jorpa who finally broke the silence, her voice soft but determined. What if we consulted the humans themselves? Their perspective might offer insights we haven't considered. Zorn's antennae perked up at the suggestion. It was an unconventional approach, to be sure. Involving a pre-galactic species in Confederation-level decisions was virtually unheard of. And yet, you may be onto something, Jorpa, Zorn said slowly. The humans have consistently surprised us with their adaptability and unique viewpoints. Perhaps their input is exactly what we need. He turned to Vixna. Contact the human authorities. Arrange a meeting with their top leaders and scientific minds. We need to inform them of the situation and seek their counsel. As the team dispersed to carry out their tasks, Zorn found himself once again staring out at the New York skyline. The twinkling lights that had seemed so welcoming just hours ago now felt fragile, vulnerable. Somewhere out there in the vast darkness of space, a threat was looming, a threat that could extinguish those lights forever. Hold on, Earth, Zorn murmured, his translator offline, and his words coming out as a series of soft clicks and chirps. We're not giving up on you just yet. The next day, in a heavily guarded conference room deep within the United Nations building, Zorn faced a group of ashen-faced human leaders. He had just finished briefing them on this Raycon threat, and the room was thick with tension. Let me get this straight, the U.S. President said, her voice tight with controlled panic. You're telling us that in less than a week, an alien armada is going to arrive with the intention of what? Conquering us. Destroying us. Zorn's antennae drooped slightly. Based on past Zrakan behavior, their intentions are likely a mix of both. They see emerging species as potential threats to be eliminated or subjugated. And your Galactic Confederation. The Chinese premier interjected, his eyes narrowing. They will not intervene directly. The situation is complex, Zorn replied, choosing his words carefully. Direct intervention could lead to a full-scale galactic war, which the Confederation is keen to avoid. However, we have been tasked with finding a solution, which is why we've come to you. The room erupted into a cacophony of voices, each leader trying to be heard over the others. Accusations of negligence were hurled at Zorn, while others demanded immediate access to advanced alien technology. Amidst the chaos, a quiet voice cut through the noise. What if we talk to them? The room fell silent, all eyes turning to the source of the suggestion. It was a young woman, her ID badge identifying her as Dr. Amelia Chen, a xenolinguist who had been working closely with the alien diplomatic team. Encouraged by the sudden attention, Dr. Chen continued, has anyone ever tried to actually communicate with this Raycon? To understand their motivations beyond assumptions based on past behavior? Zorn's compound eyes blinked in surprise. No, he admitted. The Zrekon have always been notoriously isolationist, refusing all diplomatic overtures. But they've never encountered humans before. Dr. Chen pressed on, her eyes shining with a mix of fear and excitement. We're an unknown variable. Maybe our unique perspective could open up channels of communication that have previously been closed. The room was silent for a moment, as everyone considered this unexpected suggestion. It was the kind of outside-the-box thinking that Zorn had come to associate with humans, but even he was taken aback by the audacity of the idea. You want to try diplomacy with an alien armada that's coming to potentially wipe us out? The Russian president asked incredulously. That seems optimistic. What other choice do we have? Dr. Chen countered. We can't fight them with our current technology. Hiding isn't an option. So why not try something unexpected? Zorn found himself nodding slowly. It's certainly unconventional, he said, his antennae twitching thoughtfully. But then again, everything about Earth's introduction to the galactic community has been unconventional. Perhaps this situation calls for an equally unconventional solution. The human leaders exchanged glances, a mix of skepticism and desperate hope on their faces. Finally, the Secretary General of the UN spoke up. Even if we decide to attempt this diplomatic approach, how would we even begin? We have no way to contact this Zrekon fleet. Zorn's mandibles clicked in what the humans had come to recognize as his equivalent of a smile. Actually, he said, I believe we might. With your permission, I'd like to bring in our xenolinguistics expert, cultural liaison Fist. He's been studying human languages and communication methods, and I believe he might have some ideas on how to adapt our long-range communication technology for this purpose. As Fist was summoned, and the discussion turned to the practicalities of interstellar diplomacy, Zorn felt a glimmer of hope. It was a long shot, to be sure. The Zrekon were not known for their willingness to negotiate. But if there was one thing he had learned about humans in his short time on Earth, it was that they had a remarkable ability to defy expectations. Over the next few days, the embassy became a hive of activity. Dr. Xil worked tirelessly with human scientists to adapt Confederation technology for Earth's power systems. Jorpa collaborated with human anthropologists and psychologists, trying to develop strategies for communicating with a notoriously aggressive species. Vixna coordinated with Earth's military leaders, helping them prepare contingency plans in case diplomacy failed. And at the center of it all was Fist, his face tentacles writhing with excitement as he worked alongside Dr. Chen and a team of human linguists. They pored over every scrap of information the Confederation had on Zrekon language and culture, trying to craft a message that might give them a chance at peace. As the deadline approached, Zorn found himself once again standing at the window of his office, staring up at the night sky. Somewhere up there, the Zrekon fleet was drawing ever closer. In less than 48 hours, they would enter the solar system, and Earth's fate would be decided. Ambassador, Zlob's voice came through the intercom, interrupting Zorn's contemplation. They're ready for you in the transmission room. Zorn took a deep breath, filling his spiracles with Earth's alien air. This was it, the moment of truth. As he made his way to the transmission room, he found himself hoping, against all logic and past experience, that somehow the combined ingenuity of humanity and the Galactic Confederation would be enough to avert disaster. The fate of Earth, and perhaps the future of galactic relations, now rested on a desperate plan born of human optimism and alien technology. As Zorn entered the transmission room, seeing the determined faces of his team and their human counterparts, he allowed himself to feel something he hadn't felt since this crisis began. Hope. Let's make history, he said, his translator conveying the mix of determination and apprehension in his voice. For Earth, for the Confederation, and for a future where we all have a place among the stars. With a nod to Fist, the transmission began, sending a message of peace hurtling through the vast emptiness of space towards the approaching Zrekon fleet. Now, all they could do was wait, and hoped that somewhere in the cold depths of space, someone was listening. Unlikely heroes emerge. The tension in the embassy's transmission room was palpable as Ambassador Zorn and his team, along with their human counterparts, waited for a response from the Zrekon fleet. Hours had passed since they had sent their carefully crafted message of peace, and still there was nothing but silence from the depths of space. Dr. Amelia Chen paced nervously, her eyes darting between the various alien devices that cluttered the room. "How long does it usually take to receive a response to an interstellar transmission?" she asked, her voice tight with anxiety. Fest's face tentacles writhed thoughtfully. "Under normal circumstances, nearly instantaneously. This Zrekon's silence is concerning." Zorn's antennae drooped slightly. "We must consider the possibility that they have no interest in communication." As if on cue, a harsh, grating sound filled the room, causing everyone to jump. One of the communication devices was coming to life, its screen flickering with strange, angular symbols. "It's them," Fest exclaimed, his tentacles quivering with excitement. "The Zrekon are responding." As Fist and Dr. Chen huddled around the device, working frantically to decipher the message, Zorn felt a mix of hope and dread. The Zrekon had responded. But what were they saying? After what felt like an eternity, Fist turned to the group, his usual enthusiastic demeanor subdued. "The message is not encouraging," he said softly. "This Zrekon commander states that they have no interest in diplomacy with, and I quote, primitive species and their misguided protectors. They demand our immediate withdrawal from Earth, or they will consider it an act of war against the Zrekon Empire." The room fell silent as the implications of the message sank in. It was Dr. Xil who finally broke the silence, his compound eyes blinking rapidly in what Zorn recognized as a sign of intense thought. "Perhaps," Xil chittered hesitantly, "we've been approaching this all wrong. We've been trying to appeal to the Zrekon's reason, their sense of galactic community. But what if we appeal to something else? Their pride, perhaps." Zorn's antennae perked up with interest. "Go on, Doctor. What do you have in mind?" Xil's mandibles clicked excitedly as he warmed to his idea. "The Zrekon pride themselves on their martial prowess, correct? What if we challenge them to prove their superiority? Through a contest." "A contest?" The U.S. President echoed incredulously. "You want us to challenge an advanced alien war fleet to some kind of Space Olympics?" "Not exactly," Xil replied, his compound eyes gleaming. "But what if we proposed a series of challenges, tests of skill, strength, and strategy? If we win, they leave Earth in peace. If they win, they get the satisfaction of proving their superiority." Zorn finished, his antennae twitching thoughtfully. "It's risky, but it might just appeal to their warrior ethos." Dr. Chen nodded slowly, a spark of hope igniting in her eyes. "And it would buy us time. Even if they agree, setting up such a contest would take preparation." As the group debated the merits and risks of this plan, Jorpa, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly spoke up. "There's something else to consider," she said, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with excitement. "This isn't just about buying time or appealing to Zrekon pride. This is an opportunity to showcase humanity's unique qualities, the very qualities that make them valuable to the galactic community." Zorn turned to Jorba, his compound eyes focusing intently on the anthropologist. "Explain, please." Jorpa's skin rippled with enthusiasm as she elaborated. "Think about it. In the short time we've been here, we've seen humans display remarkable adaptability, creative problem-solving, and an uncanny ability to form connections across species boundaries. These are the qualities that could truly impress the Zrekon and the rest of the galactic community." As the implications of Jorpa's words sank in, a new energy filled the room. This wasn't just about averting a crisis. It was about proving humanity's worth on a galactic stage. "All right," Zorn said, his voice filled with newfound determination. "Let's craft our response. We'll propose a series of challenges, each designed to test different aspects of intelligence, skill, and character. And we'll make it clear that these challenges will be faced not just by us, but by human champions as well. As the team set to work, a flurry of activity erupted across the globe. World leaders conferred, scientists theorized, and an unprecedented wave of global cooperation began to take shape. The question on everyone's minds: who would represent humanity in this high-stakes galactic contest? In a small town in Kenya, Dr. Keone Okoro received an urgent call from the United Nations. The renowned climatologist had been working on innovative solutions for drought-resistant agriculture, but nothing could have prepared her for the request that came through her phone. "You want me to what?" she asked, certain she had misheard. "To represent humanity in a contest of environmental adaptation," the voice on the other end repeated. "Your work on climate resilience could be the key to impressing an alien species with humanity's ability to overcome planetary challenges." Half a world away, in a bustling Tokyo laboratory, robotics engineer Hiroshi Tanaka stared in disbelief at the official government directive on his computer screen. His experimental search and rescue robots, designed to navigate disaster zones, were now being called upon for a very different kind of mission. "Interstellar search and rescue simulation," he murmured, a mix of terror and excitement coursing through him. "Well, I always did want my work to have a global impact. I just never imagined it would be quite this global." In Rio de Janeiro, capoeira master Luisa Santos was in the middle of a class when she received the news. Her unique blend of martial arts, dance, and acrobatics had caught the attention of those searching for someone to showcase human physical prowess and cultural expression. "A galactic dance-off," she laughed, her eyes sparkling with the thrill of the challenge. "Now that's what I call taking capoeira to new heights." And in a maximum security prison in the United States, infamous hacker-turned-cybersecurity consultant Eleanor "Ghost" Reeves received an unexpected visit from some very official-looking men in suits. "Let me get this straight," she said, leaning back in her chair with a smirk. "You want me, a convicted cybercriminal, to help defend Earth against alien hackers? Oh, this is going to be fun." As these unlikely heroes and others like them were gathered from across the globe, the Galactic Confederation Embassy became a hive of activity. Dr. Xil worked tirelessly with human scientists to create environments that could simulate various alien worlds for the challenges. Fest collaborated with human linguists and cultural experts to ensure that nothing would be lost in translation during the contests. Zorpa found herself in her element, working to prepare the human champions for the cultural aspects of their encounters with this Raycon. Her bioluminescent skin pulsed with different colors as she excitedly explained alien customs and potential pitfalls. "Remember," she told the assembled human champions, "this Raycon value strength, but they also respect cunning. Don't be afraid to think outside the box. In fact, your unique human perspectives might be your greatest advantage." Meanwhile, Security Chief Vixna worked with military strategists from around the world, preparing for the worst-case scenario. "We hope for the best," she told them, her multiple eyes scanning the room. "But we must be prepared for the worst. If diplomacy and competition fail, we need to be ready to defend this planet with everything we've got." As the preparations continued at a frantic pace, Ambassador Zorn found a quiet moment to reflect. Standing on the roof of the embassy, he gazed up at the night sky, knowing that somewhere up there, this Raycon fleet was drawing ever closer. "Ambassador," a voice called softly. Zorn turned to see Dr. Amelia Chen stepping out onto the roof, a steaming mug in her hands. "Dr. Chen," Zorn greeted her, his antennae twitching in a gesture of welcome. "Trouble sleeping?" She laughed softly, moving to stand beside him. "I don't think anyone's getting much sleep these days." She held out the mug to him. "I brought you some tea. I wasn't sure if you could drink it, but I thought, well, it's a human custom to share a warm drink in times of stress." Zorn's mandibles clicked in what Chen had come to recognize as a smile. "Thank you," he said, carefully taking the mug. "While I can't drink it, I deeply appreciate the gesture." He held the mug close, letting the warmth seep into his exoskeleton. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, both gazing up at the stars. Finally, Chen spoke. "Do you think this will work?" she asked softly. "This contest, I mean. Do we really have a chance?" Zorn was quiet for a long moment, his compound eyes reflecting the starlight. "In all my years of diplomatic service," he said slowly, "I've never encountered a species quite like humanity. Your adaptability, your creativity, your sheer determination in the face of overwhelming odds. It's unlike anything I've seen." He turned to look at Chen, his alien features somehow conveying that deep sincerity. "I don't know if this will work, Dr. Chen. But I do know this. If any species has a chance of surprising this Raycon, of changing the course of galactic history through sheer force of will and ingenuity, it's humanity." Chen felt a lump form in her throat, moved by the alien ambassador's words. "Thank you," she whispered, "for believing in us, for giving us a chance." Zorn's antennae twitched in acknowledgement. "You've earned it," he said simply. "Now we should both try to get some rest. Tomorrow we make our final preparations. The day after, we face the Zrekhan." As they turned to head back inside, a streak of light crossed the sky, a meteor burning up in Earth's atmosphere. To Zorn, it was a reminder of the fragility of this world they were trying to protect. To Chen, it was a symbol of hope, a light in the darkness, brief but brilliant. Neither of them knew what the coming days would bring, but in that moment, under the vast canopy of stars, an alien diplomat and a human scientist shared a common purpose and a flicker of hope for the future. The next day passed in a blur of final preparations. The human champions trained rigorously, absorbing as much information about alien cultures and technologies as they could. Earth's greatest minds worked alongside their alien counterparts, fine-tuning strategies and backup plans. As the hour of the Zrekon's arrival drew near, a tense calm settled over the planet. In homes and public squares around the world, humans gathered around screens, waiting for news. The fate of their world rested in the hands of a diverse group of individuals they'd never heard of just days ago. In the embassy's main conference room, now converted into a command center, Ambassador Zorn addressed the assembled team, both alien and human. "The Zrekon fleet will enter the solar system within the hour," he said, his translator conveying the gravity in his voice. "They have agreed to our proposal for a contest, but make no mistake, they do not expect to be impressed. They have agreed to this as a form of sport, a way to prove their superiority before they carry out their original intentions." He paused, his compound eyes sweeping across the room. "Our task is to prove them wrong, to show them, and the entire galactic community, that humanity is not just another primitive species to be conquered or ignored, but a valuable addition to the cosmic tapestry." Dr. Chen stepped forward, standing beside Zorn. "We know the challenges ahead of us are immense," she said, her voice steady despite the fear she felt. "But so does our resolve. We stand here today, humans and aliens working side by side, as proof that cooperation across the stars is possible. Now, let's show this Raycon what that cooperation can achieve." As if on cue, alarms began to sound. On the large screen dominating one wall of the room, a series of blips appeared, approaching Earth's solar system at incredible speed. "This is it," Zorn said, his antennae quivering with a mix of anticipation and dread. "The Zrekon have arrived. Let the contest begin." As the room erupted into focused activity, Zorn and Chen exchanged a look. In that moment, no words were necessary. Human and alien, they were united in purpose, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The fate of Earth, and perhaps the future of galactic relations, now rested in the hands of this unlikely group of heroes. As the Zrekon fleet drew ever closer, the stage was set for a contest that would determine the course of human history, and perhaps reshape the very fabric of galactic society. A new understanding. The arrival of the Zrekon fleet was a sight that would be forever etched in the memories of all who witnessed it. Massive ships, their hulls gleaming with an otherworldly metal, filled the sky above Earth's major cities. Their presence was a stark reminder of the power imbalance at play and the high stakes of the contest about to unfold. In New York, where the Galactic Confederation embassy served as the focal point for Earth's defense, Ambassador Zorn stood atop the building, his compound eyes taking in the awe-inspiring and terrifying spectacle. Beside him, Dr. Amelia Chen gasped softly, her hand unconsciously reaching out to steady herself against Zorn's exoskeleton. "There, enormous," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of sirens and the low, thrumming hum emanating from the alien ships. Zorn's antennae twitched in acknowledgement. "This Raycon believe in displays of power," he said, his translator conveying a mix of reverence and concern. "This is as much a part of the contest as the challenges themselves." As they watched, a smaller craft detached from the main fleet, descending towards the designated meeting point in Central Park. It was time. The human champions, along with Zorn's team and key Earth leaders, gathered at the edge of the Great Lawn. The usually bustling park was eerily empty, save for this small group and the squadrons of military personnel maintaining a wide perimeter. Dr. Keone Okoro, the climatologist, nervously adjusted her lab coat. Beside her, robotics engineer Hiroshi Tanaka fiddled with a small control panel on his wrist, double-checking his robot systems. Capoeira master Luisa Santos stretched, her lithe body coiled with tension, while hacker Eleanor Ghost Reeves cracked her knuckles, a mischievous glint in her eye, despite the gravity of the situation. The Zrekon ship landed with a precision that spoke of advanced technology and countless planetary invasions. As the dust settled, a ramp extended from the craft, and the Zrekon delegation emerged. The collective gasp from the human onlookers was audible. The Zrekon were imposing figures, tall, muscular beings with iridescent scales and eyes that seemed to glow with an inner fire. They moved with a fluid grace that belied their massive size, every motion hinting at carefully restrained power. The leader of the Zrekon delegation stepped forward, its gaze sweeping over the assembled group with an air of disdain. When it spoke, the words were translated through a device on its armor, the voice deep and resonant. "We are Krozar, commander of the Zrekon Imperial Fleet," it announced. "We have agreed to this contest as a courtesy to the Galactic Confederation. Do not mistake this for weakness or mercy. When we inevitably prove our superiority, this planet and all its resources will belong to the Zrekon Empire." Ambassador Zorn stepped forward, his small frame dwarfed by the towering Zrekon, yet his posture remained dignified. "Commander Krozar," he said, his translator working to convey both respect and determination, "we welcome you to Earth. We look forward to demonstrating that this planet and its people have more to offer the galaxy as allies than as conquered subjects." Krozar's eyes narrowed, a low growl emanating from its throat. "Pretty words, Ambassador. Let us see if your champions can match them with deeds." And so the contest began. The first challenge was one of environmental adaptation. In a specially prepared area of the park, Dr. Okoro faced off against a Zrekon scientist. Their task: to create a sustainable ecosystem in a simulated alien environment, one hostile to both human and Zrekon life. As the challenge unfolded, it became clear that the Zrekon approach was one of domination, forcing the environment to bend to their will through sheer technological might. In contrast, Dr. Okoro's method was one of harmony and innovation. She worked with the simulated environment, using Earth-inspired biomimicry to create a system that was not only sustainable but thriving. "Fascinating," Zorn murmured as he observed. "The Zrekon seek to conquer, while the human seeks to adapt and coexist." To everyone's surprise, perhaps even Dr. Okoro's, her ecosystem outlasted and outperformed the Zrekons. It was a small victory, but a significant one. Krozar's expression remained impassive, but there was a new glint of interest in its eyes. The next challenge played to Hiroshi Tanaka's strengths. In a complex maze-like structure, filled with hazards and obstacles, His search and rescue robots competed against Zrakan drones to locate and retrieve simulated life forms. The Zrakan drones were faster and more powerful, easily smashing through obstacles. But Tanaka's robots displayed an adaptability and problem-solving capability that allowed them to navigate the changing environment more effectively. In the end, Tanaka's team retrieved more survivors with less collateral damage. Impressive, Crozar admitted grudgingly. Your machines show an unexpected level of sophistication. The third challenge was one of physical prowess and cultural expression. Luisa Santos, the capoeira master, faced off against a Zrakan warrior in a contest that was part martial art, part dance, and part acrobatic display. The Zrakan's performance was a devastating display of power and precision. Every move was designed to showcase their physical superiority. But Luisa's capoeira was something entirely different. Her fluid movements, the rhythm of her steps, the way she seemed to flow around her opponent rather than confronting them directly, it was unlike anything the Zrakan had ever seen. As Luisa's performance reached its crescendo, even some of the Zrakan onlookers were nodding in appreciation. Crozar's expression was unreadable, but there was a new tension in its posture. The final challenge fell to Eleanor Ghost Reeves. In a virtual environment, she faced off against a Zrakan cyber warrior in a complex hacking and counter-hacking scenario. The contest was invisible to most observers, playing out in the digital realm. But on the large screens set up to display their progress, it became clear that a titanic struggle was underway. The Zrakan's brute force approaches and sophisticated algorithms were formidable, but Ghost's creativity and unconventional thinking allowed her to find solutions and exploit weaknesses that the more rigid Zrakan systems couldn't anticipate. In the end, Ghost emerged victorious, her virtual avatar standing triumphant over the defeated Zrakan systems. The human onlookers erupted in cheers, while the Zrakan delegation muttered among themselves, their earlier disdain replaced by confusion and perhaps a grudging respect. Crozar stepped forward, its eyes blazing. Impossible, it growled. You must have cheated. There is no way a primitive species could defeat us in these trials. It was Dr. Chen who responded, stepping forward despite Zorn's attempt to hold her back. It's not about being primitive or advanced, she said, her voice firm despite her racing heart. It's about perspective. Each of these challenges showcased a different aspect of humanity, our ability to adapt, to innovate, to express ourselves, to think outside the box. We may not have your technological advancement or your physical strength, but we have something just as valuable: diversity of thought and approach. Zorn moved to stand beside her. Commander Crozar, he said, what you've witnessed here is precisely why the Galactic Confederation is interested in bringing humanity into the fold. Their unique perspectives and problem-solving abilities could bring fresh insights to challenges that have plagued our galactic community for eons. For a long moment, Crozar was silent, its gaze moving from the human champions to Zorn, to the massive ships still hovering in the sky. When it finally spoke, there was a new note in its voice, something almost like uncertainty. You have surprised us, Crozar admitted. In all our conquests, we have never encountered a species quite like yours. You are weak, yet you find strength in that weakness. You are technologically inferior, yet you wield that technology in ways we had not considered. The Zrakan commander's next words sent a ripple of shock through both the human and Confederation representatives. Perhaps there is more to learn here than we had anticipated. What followed was unprecedented in galactic history. Instead of conquest or retreat, the Zrakan proposed a cultural exchange. A small delegation would remain on Earth to study human culture and society, while a group of human representatives would be invited to visit the Zrakan homeworld. As the details were hammered out between Earth's leaders, the Confederation diplomats, and the Zrakan commanders, Zorn found a moment to pull Dr. Chen aside. Do you realize what you've accomplished? He asked, his antennae quivering with excitement. You've not only saved your planet, but potentially changed the course of galactic politics. The Zraikon have never willingly engaged in cultural exchange before. Chen smiled, the tension of the past weeks finally easing from her shoulders. We all did this, she said. Humans and aliens working together. Isn't that what the Galactic Confederation is all about? Zorn's mandibles clicked in agreement. Indeed, and I have a feeling this is just the beginning. As the Zraikon ships began to depart, their retreat transforming into a gesture of peace rather than defeat, the people of Earth celebrated. It was a celebration not just of survival, but of a new chapter in human history, one that extended far beyond the boundaries of their own planet. In the days and weeks that followed, the world buzzed with excitement and activity. Preparations began for Earth's formal induction into the Galactic Confederation. The human champions who had faced the Zraikon became overnight celebrities, their stories inspiring millions to look to the stars with hope rather than fear. Dr. Okuro's environmental adaptation techniques were already being studied for application on other worlds. Hiroshi Tanaka found himself fielding offers from alien tech companies eager to incorporate his adaptive AI into their own systems. Luisa Santos was invited to perform capoeira on a dozen different planets, while Eleanor Ghost Reeves was offered a job as a cybersecurity consultant for the Confederation itself, pending the completion of her earthbound sentence, of course. As for Ambassador Zorn and his team, they found themselves in the unprecedented position of being heroes on an alien world. Zorn was even invited to throw the first pitch at a baseball game, a ceremony that, despite his extensive preparation, resulted in the ball hovering uncertainly for a moment before dropping straight down, much to the crowd's amusement and delight. One evening, as Earth's sun set on another day of this new era, Zorn stood on the roof of the embassy with Dr. Chen, reminiscing about the events that had brought them to this point. "You know," Chen said, sipping from a mug of tea, "when I first started working with your team, I never imagined it would lead to all this. Alien invasions, galactic contests, cultural exchanges with a warrior species. It's like something out of a science fiction story." Zorn's antennae twitched in amusement. "Life, Dr. Chen, often has a way of exceeding even our wildest imaginations, especially when humans are involved." As they stood there, watching the first stars appear in the darkening sky, a streak of light caught their attention. But this was no meteor. It was a ship, ascending from Earth to join the stars. The first human expedition to another world was setting off, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of an entire planet. And as Zorn and Chen watched it disappear into the vast expanse of space, they shared a moment of quiet awe at the infinite possibilities that lay ahead. In that moment, on a small blue planet that had so recently teetered on the brink of destruction, a new understanding was born. An understanding that transcended species and star systems, that spoke to the very heart of what it meant to be part of the grand cosmic community. The future, with all its challenges and opportunities, awaited, and humanity, in all its beautiful, chaotic, innovative glory, was ready to embrace it.